Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and today we continue our Fantasy Files series with a look at Seahawks running back Chris Carson. Entered the league in 2017 as a seventh-round pick, 249th player overall selected. He didn't do much his first year, only played 4 games. Unfortunately, broke his ankle, and it has been kind of the story of his career to an extent, dealing with these injuries. 2018 had a hip issue. Last year missed 4 games due to a foot sprain. So I get it. Carson has been banged up over the years, but people, when he has been healthy, my goodness, like we're truly looking at not only one of the more fun backs to watch. I mean, this dude's violent running style reminds me of Marion Barber, but just overall, in terms of pretty much any rushing efficiency metric you want to look at, you're going to see Carson towards the top of the list. So among 115 running backs with at least 100 carries since 2017, we got Chris Carson coming in at 12th in PFF rushing grade, tied for 15th in missed tackles forced per rush, tied for 25th in yards per carry, 5th in yards after contact per rush, and 9th in first down or touchdown percentage on his carries. So, I mean, that, 3.4 yards after contact per rush number tells you all you need to know about this guy. And you can pull up the tape. Even last year, I mean, I felt like he didn't have just even his counting stats last year weren't the same. He didn't go over 1,300 yards for the first time in 3 years. Unfortunately, being limited to 12 games, we just didn't get the consistent dose of him that we were a little more used to in 2018, 2019, when he at least played 14 games in those years. But back-to-back weeks against the Vikings and the Eagles, like he just had these mini beast mode-esque runs where there's 3 different guys that have a chance to tackle him, and he just kind of plows through them and finds his way into the end zone. So we saw in 2019, if you happen to have him on your fantasy squad, you are undoubtedly not too happy about those league high 7 fumbles. But people, it just hasn't really been an issue otherwise. He only had 1 fumble last year. I mean, if you look at his entire career, it really was just a blip on the radar. Am I saying that right? Was I saying it wrong? Is it blimp on the radar is the right expression? I saw someone reviewing the pod and they brought up how I always mess that up. So always appreciate the reviews. Let me know. And we're going to go with blip on the radar for right now. And if I'm wrong, appreciate you guys letting me know. Anyway, Carson, on his other 501 touches throughout his career, he's only let the ball hit the ground on 4 separate occasions. So the fumble issue it's just not something that we need to worry about. Like 2020 would have been the year, or 2019 when it was going on, where we see Carson take a step back because of the fumbles, but that's in the past. We're not going to see, unless it just springs back to the forefront. There's no reason why the fumbles in 2019 should have any sort of just influence on Carson in 2021. And, even if he hasn't been McCaffrey-esque as a receiver at times, he's not the most smooth catcher of the football, I would say, based on the film, but he's still a more than solid pass catching running back. Not quite as good as he is as a rusher, but I mean, we're still looking at a guy that's hardly a liability as a, blocker. And he caught 37 passes in 2 consecutive years. Even like, PFF receiving grade, we see him come in as anybody's idea of an above average running back. So Carson, he's a better rusher than receiver, but we're almost seeing like a, Leonard Fournette 2019, 2020 situation where I don't think Carson on the majority of NFL depth charts would really have this chance to have a 3-down role, but he's not on these other teams with a built-in scat back and a committee system. He's on the same team that afforded him 315 freaking touches in 2019, 267 touches in 2018 in just 14 games. And he's going back in as the undisputed featured back. So I get it. Second contract running back. I was ready to be, probably out on both Carson and Aaron Jones if they were going to a new team, just because historically we don't see high-priced free agent running backs keep going very well. There's an exception here and there. You get your DeMarco Murray first year with the Titans come back and stuff like that, but they're few and far between. And just, again, with the way Carson plays, he's someone that I understand just not really being overly high on moving forward, because he's probably not going to have the longest of careers. At least you would think. He's going to be 27 on September 16th. But people, we're not here to project how he's going to be in, 2025. We're only looking at 2021. And per his own freaking coach, Pete Carroll, and just the whole kind of way this whole offseason has gone. Carlos Hyde takes his talents to Jacksonville. Rashaad Penny is seemingly healthy, and he's expected to have at least some sort of role throughout the season, but the Seahawks declined his 5th-year, option from being a former first-round pick. So that's not looking good. The other backups, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, Alex Collins, all guys have already been in the system anyway. So it's a situation that Carson, I didn't really expect him to walk back into this smooth of a room, this much of a guarantee for a 3-down roll, but it's exactly what we're seeing come to fruition. And there was a press conference from January after the Seahawks lost to the Rams, and Pete Carroll was pretty distraught about it. And I mean, some of these quotes are just absolutely nauseating. So this is from Pete Carroll. We have to run the ball better, not even better. We have to run it more. We have to dictate what's going on with the people that we're playing. And that's one of the ways to do that. Next quote, remember, I don't mind winning 20-9. I don't mind winning 17-14. I want to win control in the game. That means we don't give them the football. I mean, Pete, just win 40-9, win 41-14, like make it easier on yourself. Next quote. I know the fans aren't really jacked on hearing that, but Russ knows it too. We need to be able to knock those guys into the scheme that we want to throw at. I thought one of the really good quotes from my boss man, Chris Collinsworth, over the years made a lot of sense. I think it was maybe even last year, 2019, but all the data we have tells us that like you don't need to be a great running team for play action to be effective. Like, look, all these NFL players, I was never someone that even remotely could play at an NFL level. That was never in my pipe dream. I played Division III college football, but I played linebacker. And just as someone that spent, 10 plus years on the practice field trying to hone my skills at linebacker, like you're taught from day one, first step up. It's like the opposite. If you're in baseball and you're an outfielder, first step back, linebacker, it was first step up, adjust to the pass. And that's because if you're responsible for a gap and you're playing a lot of these run first teams, like you're gonna get your socks knocked off if you're not, playing the run first. But with that in mind, we just see play action at the NFL level where guys are averaging, at worst, 7 yards per pass attempt. Play action just continues to work, and you don't even really need a good run game to force defense to respect it because it's been so drilled in defenders' heads since they were kids that they need to respect the run first. So it's starting to come around the league, but we're going to continue to see play action be fine with or without the presence of a great run game. And Collinsworth admitted that and said that even though it went against his intuition, all the numbers tell us otherwise, and we need to kind of start to accept that. So finally, Carroll said it's a football thing. It's a scheme thing. I want to see if we can run the ball more effectively to focus the play of the opponents and see if we can force them to do things like we like them to do. Just one quote after another, man. Sheesh. Carroll, maybe he's just being a victim of the moment. They did hire, Shane Waldron from the Rams. He was their passing game coordinator. So maybe he comes over, decides he's going to run Sean McVay's offense and they're going to be more pass heavy, but I don't think so, people. And it's not good for Russ. It's not good for Metcalf. It's not good for Lockett, not good for Eskridge, Gerald Everett, if that's your cup of tea. I will say, this defense, we're looking good with them not being able to run the ball as much as they want to, because I do think we are looking at a unit that are full of frauds. Jamal Adams, someone that I was certainly much higher on in the past, thinking that he could be, truly kind of in the Derwin James level of just overall safeties. I am very well aware that I was wrong on that sentiment. We saw him, whether it was Julian Edelman or, Cooper Kupp later, like he just does not have that coverage ability. With that said, he is a great, for the safety position, he really is like a generational pass rusher. Not to overuse that word. Sorry, everyone. But man, you look at the defense last year and it's just fraudulent how they improved. Like they improved down the stretch, but the quarterbacks they played just weren't even worth a damn. I mean, for the first part of the year, this was the 28th ranked scoring defense until their final 6 games when they faced Dwayne Haskins, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, CJ Beathard, Sam Darnold, and Colt McCoy. So that's why this defense, allowed, let's see, 17, 3, 15, 9, 23, and 30 points to end the season. It's because they were facing trash competition. So during that stretch, they were able to get away from, throwing the ball, letting Russ cook, and they were still winning games. Very doubtful they can do that again in the 2021, but it sounds like Carroll at least wants to try. So PFF Lily stat here for Chris Carson is going to be about really, just this idea that he's more injury prone to everyone else. And I understand his running style. I understand he's an aging back. I'm not saying you need to have him ranked as a legit top 12 RB1 at this moment in time, but he and Joe Mixon are just the two guys I see on Twitter where everyone just fades them. Injury predictor Twitter fades them and says, well, they're going to hurt. I mean, Carson has missed 7 regular season games over the past 3 seasons. Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, basically Austin Eckler, missed all that and more last season alone. And we just don't even bring that up in the conversation with CMC, Saquon, Eckler in particular. I know Mixon gets hit by it as well, but like people, I'm going to have, Dr. Evan Porras from Fantasy Points on this podcast before the season. And he is, one of the leaders in the idea that being injury prone almost never exists. There are some very rare situations. James Conner being someone that came back from cancer. He has more of a likelihood of kind of experiencing certain injuries because his bone density just isn't as strong as it used to be. Like, there are medical formulas behind some guys. Very rarely, okay, maybe being a little more injury prone. When guys get a lot older, that's another thing. But to hold it so much more against certain players and other ones, I feel like it's often incredibly arbitrary in our community. So with all that said, Chris Carson, I have been dropping him down these ranks a little bit as it becomes more clear to me that Penny is at least healthy enough to be involved. So he's my RB16. He was actually my RB12 for a little bit in the offseason, but I've moved guys like Mixon, McCaffrey's always been my RB1. I've moved guys like Mixon, Antonio Gibson, Najee Harris, even Clyde Edwards-Helaire ahead of him, because the more I look at kind of their roles, I think they have a similar 3-down featured workhorse role. And I just, give me the younger back that I think is similarly talented over Carson when it comes down to that. Just make sure those touches are equal. So still taking Carson ahead of, Miles Sanders and, Chase Edmonds and some of these other guys with, also a backfield that we're a little unsure of. But with Carson, we don't need to be that unsure of. And that's what I'm trying to really explain here the most. So he's got an ADP as the RB19. I think Carson's a fantastic, first running back for teams that want to try to grab, 3 or even maybe 4 wide receivers or a tight end to start. So, he's right there. And the only concern, and this kind of leads me into the Rashaad Penny conversation, the only concern is how involved Penny will be. We don't know. I mean, he had the horrific 2019 injury. He was back towards the end of last year, but they clearly didn't really trust him to even have like a part-time role. But if we go back to 2019 before Penny got hurt, I mean, he's not been a bust in terms of being a bad football player, everybody. He's actually looked pretty damn explosive for certain stretches of time. I mean, you look at his rookie year, and he actually averaged 4.9 yards per carry, 5.7 yards per carry next year. It's not the greatest, one metric for defining a running back. I get it, but truly the film matches it. I mean, having this like 40-yard explosive run against the Steelers and what he did in his 2-week stretch against the Eagles and Vikings showed what the Seahawks might want to do if they actually have these two healthy, which is incredibly unlikely. We have 3 years of evidence that tells us it's very hard for them both to be healthy at the same time. With that said, in the 2 games we did see it, I mean, Carson had, 12 touches. Penny had 14, 51% to 49% snap threshold. The next week, Carson had 24 touches. Penny had 19, 52% to 47% snap disparity. So, yeah, I mean, Carson fully expected to be the clear-cut touch leader and accordingly should be ranked as a mid-tier fantasy RB2 or worse. But Rashaad Penny, he's going that RB50 handcuff mix. He probably offers a better chance to have weekly flex consideration than guys like Alexander Madison, maybe Latavius Murray, maybe even Tony Pollard. So I don't know if you get the same 3-down handcuff role. I mean, Homer, DJ Dallas, and Collins are established enough there that I could see them, making it more of a committee if Carson goes down. But Rashaad Penny, not someone I'm saying you definitely need to go out and get, but I think where he's being valued right now, again, if you want to be a little contrarian, hope for, okay, how about this? If you really think Carson's going to get hurt and you're that confident in it, take Rashaad Penny at freaking RB50, because that's going to be what you're like, 14th, 15th round pick or something like that. If you're so smart with the injury predictor, then go ahead and get the guy that's going, 40 spots later. But if not, go ahead and get Chris Carson as the value fantasy RB2 that he looks like entering 2021. But hey, people, it doesn't just stop here with the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. You can also check out PFF's podcast network, which covers everything NFL, college, and fantasy football. Recap the NFL draft with Mike Renner and Austin Gale's 2-for-1 Drafts podcast, or get all the 2021 betting content you need with the PFF forecast. Finally, if you like fantasy football and if you like playing fantasy for money, you need to check out Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's got everything, including season-long and playoff best ball. Best ball is a season-long game where you draft a team like you normally do. But that's it. There's no in-season roster management. Underdog automatically selects your best performers each week, saving you loads of time. So go to Underdog Fantasy and deposit $10 using promo code PFF. Get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. Promo code PFF. Draft now, Underdog Fantasy. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, Daily Fantasy Files, Wednesday recap shows, Friday 10 questions, 9 episodes a week. Absolutely love it and absolutely love all you listeners. So until next time, take care, everybody.